Good evening. Welcome to the big question on NDTV Profit. I'm Vikram Oza. This is the very first day of 2026. We're kicking off the year with a question that could decide the future of India's consumer economy. The big question that we're asking tonight, the Gen Z economy. Are India's legacy brands, are they ready for the 2026 shift? Because make no mistake, Gen Z is no longer that consumer of tomorrow that we're talking about. Gen Z is actually the market today itself. In fact, by some estimates, India's Gen Z already drives as much as 43% of consumer spending. That's the total consumption we're talking about in India, with direct spending of $250 billion in 2025 itself. So their collective spending power now stands at $860 billion today. It's projected to explode to $2 trillion by the year 2035. In fact, if you're going by this data, if it is correct, every second rupee that is going to be spent in India by the year 2035 is going to come from Gen Z. So, no, this is not a youth trend that we're talking about. This is a macro shift. And India Inc. knows this. Look at Nestle. They're telling us that the ingredient list is no longer this blind spot anymore. It's the back of the pack that matters as much as the front. HUL, Tata Trend, Aditya Birla Fashion, Flipkart, even Harley-Davidson, all the legacy brands, they are scrambling now. They want to stay relevant to Gen Z buyers. You've got Harley-Davidson onboarding Gen Z faces. Trent is rolling out burnt toast and scaling Zudio for Trent-led affordable aspiration. And look at Flipkart. They're spoiled. That brand, the spoiled with a Y instead of an I. That app has been built just for Gen Z. And Lakme is turning younger. Newer brand ambassadors. Fashion houses, they're launching entirely new labels for a generation that actually shops very, very differently. Because Gen Z does not shop brand first. They shop trend first. They don't just browse. They discover through creators. And they don't separate online and offline either. They move seamlessly between both of them. And they don't buy silently either. They buy very socially, very visually, with their inner circle. So many a times you will find them on Instagram sharing pictures with their inner circle, deciding on what to buy and what to not. So from a quick dipstick that I did here in my office with Gen Z office colleagues, it really keeps very obvious now that legacy is not mattering as much as how the brand is speaking to them. That storytelling is important, and the way the brand reflects the kind of tastes and sensibilities that Gen Z stands for. So they spend on food, they spend on fashion, travel, OTT platforms, they spend on beauty. All of this, but they also demand affordable aspiration. They want authenticity of the brand and the values that align with who they are, their personality. So here's the real question that we must ask as we start off our journey on 2026. Are India's legacy brands, are they genuinely reinventing themselves for this Gen Z economy, or are they just changing the packaging, picking younger faces, hoping that the old playbook still works? Because it is quite obvious that in the world of Gen Z, this kind of influence matters a lot. The kind of inner circle that we spoke about, that matters. Influencer marketing is not history. It is actually very real. And that kind of trust, if that has to be earned, it has to happen on a day-to-day basis. It cannot be taken for granted. Let's invite our panelists to share their opinions. Sameer Joshi is with us, founding partner at Sam & Andy. And Anya Wig is with us, Gen Z influencer as well. Great to have you with us. Sameer Joshi, from your perspective, in the way that the legacy brands have positioned themselves and are catering to Gen Z as of now, how is that different from, some of those digital-first brands, the D2C brands, and how they're talking to Gen Z?
Okay, hi. Wishing you all a very happy new year.
Happy New Year.
It's a great year to start with, because we all know that, Gen Z is the new, everybody's looking after them. Okay, it's a very valid question. What you are saying that, Gen Z are, so legacy brands are whether taking them only as a Gen Z player, or they are just taking them as a prop. Yeah, you're rightly mentioned, because, Gen Z is a value first behavior. Okay. It is they are real, but it's conditional. So it matters when, so they will always ask that, whether we want a legacy brand. What they have done is they are taking them only as a, if they're making a communication, they are using them as a Gen Z. But what D2C brands are doing, the Gen Z brands are doing, they're actually working with them. Legacy brands are taking them as a Gen Z, but they are not working on the product and the system, which they need to do it. Whether your D2C brands and the Gen Z brands, they know how to do it and they're working with the system. They are working as they're working your product. They're working on the innovation. And if you notice, what's happening is they are, when we see the legacy brands, they will have their systems and the work, they will always review every quarter. Whereas Gen Z brands are always reviewing not in a month, but on a week and a daily basis. That is a huge difference we can see when legacy brands are taking Gen Z only as a Gen Z, as a one of the segments, whereas Gen Z brands, the D2C brands, they are taking them as the core and they have lived with them and actually they've born with them. That is what I would say about this.
Anya, do you agree with what you're hearing as a Gen Z influencer, as a Gen Z yourself? What are you looking for in brands today? And are they delivering to you in a style and fashion that you like? Compared to the legacy brands, the kind of Instagram shopping that happens often, how are they starkly different, if they are?
First of all, Happy New Year as well to everybody. I think it's not a competition between legacy brands and D2C brands and newer startups. I think for us, what matters more is the sort of brand that we're aligned with. Honesty matters more, ethics matter more. And a lot of people keep saying that we do a lot of impulse buying, but I think Gen Z also do a lot of impulse research, regardless of the status of the brand, be it a brand that's been there for 10 years, be it a brand that your family has been using for many, many years. If that's an answer of somebody, if it's a recommendation, you instantly search it up on the internet. Maybe you look at an influencer that's using it, maybe you Google it. And I think with the advent of social media, internet, and generally just us questioning everything that's around us, we make sure that we see everything what's behind the label. And like you rightly said, right, Nestle and bigger companies are also realizing that Gen Z cares not just about brands that have been in existence for long, but things like cultural relevance, what's trending, what are the influencers that I look up to wearing today? What are they purchasing today? And I also feel like there's a feeling of community belongingness. And what I would say, however, is while, of course, trends matter a lot and all of these transparency, of course, matters a lot, I think affordability still is extremely essential today. While I might pay slightly more for a brand that's more ethical, I will not pay more for greenwashing. I will definitely not pay double for a brand that's doing what I think is the bare minimum of being ethical, of having some standards of quality. I really feel I would relate to a brand that sort of uses my language. And it doesn't matter if it's a legacy brand or a newer brand. If I see people like me, if I see people who I can identify with, be it micro influencers, bigger influencers, I'm more likely to go for that brand than anything else. And of course, research really matters.
So all of that really matters to a Gen Z, who is, of course, as much in the market to do her shopping as much as she's there to influence. But when you're looking at the overall picture right now, Sameer Joshi, in terms of sectors and how businesses are positioning themselves to get a larger chunk, it is now an unmistakable fact that Gen Z has a big role to play in the consumption story, in the growth story that is going to be led by consumption in India. And if that is the case, then there is a certain pivot that needs to happen. I don't know how much of that you're seeing among the legacy brands and whether there is, a page in the book of some of the D2C brands that the legacy brands can adopt, or is it just about buying out some of these D2C players that is going to eventually change the nature of the way business is done to capture Gen Z?
See, this already started. If you notice, Unilever is already, bought minimalist. Why? Because they knew that, they have their systems and processes in place, but they're a legacy brand. To adapt through D2C brands and the, Gen Z brands, it's difficult to, adapt overnight. And that's the reason you can see that Unilever bought minimalist, because they know that, I know now this kind of a system and processes and I can go with that. Most important thing, what we need to look at it is about how you can make. See, today what's happening is, all unorganized players are getting organized, and there people are seeing a opportunity to do it, be it a legacy brand or be it a Gen Z brand. So we need to see where the consumption will come from where. So if you notice about the Gen Z brands, and if you see the categories and the sectors are moving, consumption sectors will move faster. As we all know, when I say consumption factor, it's not only FMCG, but it has auto also, it has wellness also, it has health also, it has healthcare also, it's a diagnostic also. So many sectors will come with this kind of thinking. So be it a legacy brand or be it a Gen Z brand, they need to learn one thing, that they what they want, we need to give them. As my co-panelists rightly mentioned, they will look at value, yes, but they will look at value plus plus, which is price, which is which is transparency, which is ethics, which is distribution. So they will look at everything, because we don't know how this generation is going to Gen Z is going to behave. They will buy from where they will find the product. So that is also very important. So this is the way we need to look at it, and we need to change, and we need to look at this audience in this regard. Yeah.
All right, so we have two more panelists joining us, and let's get their perspective as well. Shivam Agarwal is joining us. He's founder of Dexter. Good to have you with us. Vishal Jain is also with us, managing director at Aroma Care, which is part of cosmetics. Great to have you both as well. Shivam Agarwal, from your perspective, you being another Gen Z, but when you're looking at businesses, and I know the role of influencer marketing is very strong, how strong is it? How much influence does it hold in the way Gen Z is consuming today, in the way that they're making their choices?
Sure. So first of all, happy new year to everybody here. And influencer marketing today is playing a very important role in how choice is being made. For example, let's say if you were to buy a product earlier, only way to get it to the audiences was through a TV channel or advertisement channels. But today, screens have become an important part of everybody's life. And as you know, Gen Z is spending almost 30% of their time on mobile phones. So it's a very important way to for brands to reach to the end consumer. And already all the big brands are using Gen Z as a channel to reach out to the end consumer.
Yes. And Vishal Jain, from your perspective, in terms of the legacy FMCG standpoint, what is changing the most with Gen Z? The product itself is changing? Is it the pricing strategy that's changing? Or the way trust is built, or at least the way the trust story is told?
Thank you, Vikram, for having me on this panel today. And a very happy new year to you and your viewers. Yes, for FMCG brands, I can say that the pricing also changed, the way of approaching to the Gen Zs, because Gen Z is nowhere like, they are not out of this. They are 27% by 2026 for Indian population total. Hello, can I hear?
Yes, absolutely, Vishal. We can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes. So yes, FMCG are trying to cater the Gen Z market. Like they are looking for how to impress. Like I can say, like as a cosmetic brand, मैं जब देखता हूँ तो Gen Zs के लिए क्या important है? They like authenticity. Like जो mention है product के ऊपर या फिर label के ऊपर, that should be there. तो उनका थोड़ा वे ऑफ अप्रोच थोड़ा चेंज हो गया है.
थोड़ा हुआ है या बहुत हुआ है, वो हम लोग डिस्कस कर रहे हैं. सो यू टॉक्ड अबाउट वैल्यूज. बहुत हुआ है, राइट?
यस, बहुत हुआ है.
तो मैक्सिमम चेंज आप कहाँ देख रहे हैं?
मैक्सिमम चेंज एंड लाइक अप्रोचिंग. पहले क्या होता था, ऑफलाइन मार्केट में लोग जाते थे और लेते थे, बट नाउ जेंजीज आर लाइक सर्च करते हैं इंटरनेट पे, कोई भी प्रोडक्ट को देखते, कहीं पे देखते, किसी ने बोल भी दिया, लाइक अनन्या सेड कि किसी की प्रोडक्ट, कोई भी प्रोडक्ट के बारे में सोचते सुनते हैं तो पहले वो सर्च करते कि कितना ऑथेंटिक है,
राइट,
और लोग क्या रिव्यूज दे रहे हैं उसके बारे में. उसके बाद वो अपना एक माइंडसेट बनाते हैं और आफ्टर दैट दे आर वेरी लाउड. अगर उनको अच्छा लगता है तो भी वो बहुत लाउडली उसको बोलते हैं, और अच्छा नहीं भी लगता है तो भी बहुत लाउडली बोलते हैं.
Anya बिल्कुल आपसे सहमत है. She's nodding. But Anya, when you talked about all of this, you know, values, whether it's sustainability, all of that is all very well. At the end of the day, pricing, how much does that matter to Gen Z?
I absolutely agree. Pricing matters a lot. And I was just going to say that, while we're value driven, I don't think Gen Z is price blind. For a simple example, I'm somebody that eats eggs almost every day for breakfast. And I switched to better eggs because I found on the internet that, they're cage free, and they had a slight difference in pricing from the eggs that I was already ordering. but there are better eggs in the market. And they mentioned like those 10 things that they do to make sure that the hens are not affected. But that's something I just cannot afford to do. And I will probably not buy a brand that, although is extremely sustainable, but extremely unaffordable. I think Gen Z are extremely irrational today. And while 70% of them discover products through online, through social media, through influencers, I think there's a high percentage of them that really depend on their wallets as well. And while we want brands to be value driven, I still think with any generation, what decides something is just that tiny price difference. And if there's a lot, I don't think we would go for a brand like that. And I would also say that we're today, and research says so, that Gen Z is 1.2x more likely to switch brands continuously. So brand messaging is so important today for us to realize that value, right? Brands like Boat today are constantly reinventing themselves. They're constantly in touch with Gen Z influencers, Gen Z. They're updating their design to make sure they're not just speaking the language we want to hear, but are also releasing products that are affordable, which is why they're working then, you would say, a lot of the larger brands that have been here for such a long time for the same system, for the same services that they're offering. So yes, I think value matters a lot, but it would not be at the cost of paying 2x the amount that you would generally pay. I think there's a minimum ethical standard that all brands should follow, and we shouldn't be paying too much extra for that.
But the fact remains that sometimes, because of that sustainability perspective, or because of those values that are built into certain products, the pricing seems to go up. And compared to what you would spend, not on an Instagram shopping experience, but what you would spend on maybe a mall kind of shopping, that would be a little less. So there is a higher price, and that where the value stands is going to be an important price discovery that needs to happen for most brands. Shivam Agarwal, do you agree with that? Because like Anya is pointing out, shopping today is about the messaging. It's also the social, visual, the creator-led kind of shopping that we're talking about. And there is a shift. There is a shift away from the big brands and towards platforms and influencers and communities, especially when we're talking about Gen Z. How real is that to you?
Vikram, that's absolutely correct. So what we are essentially seeing is why Gen Z trusts influencers or creators more than celebrities is because they can relate to them more. So if somebody is of my age group and they are talking from a point of view of their own experience, I can just relate to them more. I understand where they are coming from, and they very well understand that celebrities have been used as a channel to probably at times push products which were not really meant for them. And because of the internet being, they were born in the internet age, so they are very aware, they are very informed, and hence, they are making a choice where it's, they know exactly what the product stands for. So
that information being readily available and their readiness to do the research, which is an important part of it, because it's not the legacy that is going to tell the story to them. It's about what that brand and how that brand really speaks to them. Sameer Joshi, you agree with that? When the investors are looking at some of these brands, does betting on the Gen Z theme right now lower their risk because it's a long-term trend? There is a certain amount of predictability that has come in, or isn't it there? Because risk, because of execution challenges for legacy brands, those have been stated. But what about the newer players?
See, we need to understand one thing. Newer brands, they also have, I think I mentioned earlier also, newer brands also have, born with this generation. So they know what exactly this Gen Z wants. So it is not about, how they are going to play the game. It is about what they want, because this generation is very clear. See, they know what they want from their life. They know what they want from their studies. They have many options today. So it is not about, what you are going to serve them. They are going to accept it happily. They will demand. They will be brand loyal up to certain level. The moment they will see that, okay, this brand is, I'm getting another better brand in the market, they will immediately shift to that brand. So there is always a debate, this generation is not brand loyal. I'll put it this way. Yeah, certainly up to certain level, that is true. But they will go with a brand, and after a certain time, when they are going to get some kind of a difference, maybe in the price, maybe in the quality, maybe in the innovation, they will shift it. So Gen Z will always think in that direction, where legacy brand, what happens, they have their set pattern and they are going to work accordingly. And that is going to, that is, harping them or hampering them from, competing with today's D2C brands. Where you can see that, your influencers are also getting now today's, they are getting a lead role in the movies. So how their role models are also changing, how celebrities are also coming up with the brand which this today's Gen Z wants. They are also launching their own brands. So we need to understand clearly that Gen Z has their clear idea about what I want.
Yes.
And they are going to take it. They will not look at what a brand, this brand is a Tata, this brand is whichever is a brand.
Correct.
Whether it's a legacy brand, they'll not look at it. They will see what is there in for me. So Gen Z brands, which are today's D2C brands have come up with, they have always understood that, and they have come up with the product which works for them and which is for them. And that's going to be a huge difference, and that is why they are not getting struggle, where legacy brand may have to do the struggle, and that's the reason they take the route of acquiring brands from the market.
So is the struggle, Vishal Jain, I'll come to you, is the struggle in being able to innovate on the product front, or in the way your marketing strategy works to talk about the same product that you were making in the past, how it speaks to Gen Z now? Where is the actual struggle, and are you, as part of the industry, is India Inc. moving fast enough to capture the imagination of Gen Z?
Yes, and there is no difficulty actually. जैसे कि समीर जी ने बोला कि बहुत सारी लेगेसी ब्रांड्स है. There are so many brands in market. For Gen Z's, brands only like हाँ okay big brand है, but अगर कुछ ब्रांड नया इनोवेटिव नहीं कर रही है तो फिर वो साइड करते हैं. नया ब्रांड जो भी है जो अच्छा कर रहा है उसके लिए वो लोग देखते हैं. एंड एज यू सेड कि स्ट्रैटेजीज बदलती है, इन्फ्लुएंसर मार्केटिंग वगैरह चल रहा है और हाँ.
Yes. So, Anya, I just want to take away from that. When we are standing here at the starting point of 2026, a new year, I want to ask you, from everything that you're hearing today, what's the biggest mistake that you think brands will make with Gen Z? Is it about talking at them? Is it about pricing that is higher than what they could afford, perhaps, or are willing to pay? Like you mentioned, value. Or do you think it's about, if they are going to pretend to be something they're not, that's not going to work? What is the biggest mistake that you think brands could possibly make that perhaps they could take a lesson from talking as a Gen Z yourself?
There's so much to say. I'm going to find it so hard to put it in a short amount of time. But this is what I would say. I think the biggest mistake right now that a lot of legacy brands do is that they don't want to change their language. See, at the end of the day, products remain the same. You have a shampoo that you're selling. Why is the minimalist getting sold more than a L'Oreal that has existed for so many years? It's because of the messaging and the value that you're adding for the consumer. Today, I think I'm more likely to believe a micro-influencer that is promoting a brand, but is also calling out and criticizing a brand if they don't like it, which I think the most important thing here is trust. If brands are just doing messaging and these big billboards, you're not going to attract young people. What you will do to attract young people is making sure you talk to them, you speak to them. You're not just using them as consumers, but you're building a conversation with them. That's number one. Number two, I think is super important, is making sure you're ethical but also transparent. You can do a lot and you can add a lot of labels to your brand, but unless you're communicating that message to Gen Z, what is ethics? Aap kya kar rahe ho? What is your CSR money being spent? How are you ethical? What sustainability stands for you? Making sure you're actually transparent in the way that you produce but also provide the product is so important for young people today. And of course, you have your other things like you have to be relevant with trends, etc. But brands today can start their own trends. I mean, for example, there's this amazing ad by Dove that talks about a beauty shade card for a girl. They show different aspects of her life and how beauty at such a small age matters so much for a family and in the Indian cultural context, right? And it's a brand that has a legacy. And today that messaging is so important for me because I feel personal and I can see myself in that. So talking to Gen Z and conversing with them is more important than just your typical advertisements and billboards. I don't think that works anymore.
That doesn't work anymore with Gen Z. Sameer, Fast forward to the end of 2026, very quickly, if I can ask you, because we're running out of time. Do you think Gen Z is going to reward brands that genuinely reinvent themselves, or do you think they're going to punish those brands that treat this as just another marketing trend? Because that can easily happen as well. You'd agree?
Kind of. See, I'll put it this way, because this debate was there in 24 also, and this debate will be there in 26 also.
Certainly.
Okay. What is happening? A brand is there. You are in the market. We need to bridge the gap. Okay. What's happening today? We have the technology. Today we have the know-how of the D2C and the Gen Z. Okay. Legacy brand they know how to build the brand. There is a huge gap when you say my products are getting sold, so I'm not focusing more on the brand building. And these guys are saying, the legacy brand will say, let me build the brand and then I'll start selling my products. Going forward for the 2026, we need to do we need to have a great balance. And I think brands are moving in that direction. We need to have a brand building and the sales happening put together. At the Sam and Andy, we usually, we work towards it. That's the reason we need to have a great balance of the clarity, which is what you stand for. And at the same time, you need to be sold also, because otherwise you will rightly, said by Tanya, that, otherwise you will be left behind. Because today's brands know how to sell. They will keep selling. And that's the reason you see that, she rightly put up that, Minimalist is selling more than the L'Oreal and the Garnier and the other brands. So we need to have a quick balance in 2026, where we need to have a brand story also, and we need to know that, how to sell the product also. When you bridge both of this, then, media will also help, and then the consumer will also help, and, entire story will follow. Yeah.
Well, it is quite clear. As 2026 now begins, Gen Z isn't a niche anymore. So perhaps that is changing from what was at the end of 2024. Now, at the end of 2025 and the beginning of 2026, we're not looking at it as a niche. It is the new center of India's consumer story right now. So there is a certain crystallization that is happening. For brands, this is not about younger faces or louder campaigns like Anya pointed out. It's not going to be about that. It's about real reinvention in products, in pricing, in purpose, and platforms that you use to speak to Gen Z. Some are going to adapt fast, some are going to struggle. The market is going to be quick to separate the winners, the actual winners from the laggards, and that's a Gen Z test for India Inc. And we'll be tracking that very closely, no doubt about that. But let's thank our guests, Shivam Agarwal, Vishal Jain, Sameer Joshi, and Anya Wig. Thank you very much for joining us with your perspectives, and we hope you have a great 2026. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And yes, indeed, that's where we're wrapping it up. It's the first edition of The Big Question. In 2026, we'll keep raising the big ones, and we'll keep finding answers. From me, Vikramoza, and the entire team here at NDTV Profit, Happy New Year.